Hi, my name is Carla. I would start by asking you to introduce yourself in a few words.
I'm Marc Botenga. I'm a member of the European Parliament. I'm a member of the Left Group here, and I'm elected in Belgium for the Workers' Party of Belgium.
You're the one who introduced the proposition of lifting the patents on COVID-19 vaccines to the European Parliament. So my first question is quite general. I want to ask you, why did you propose this a year ago? And this kind of goes to the question of why do you support the TRIPS waiver?
Why a year ago? Because you could feel that this was going to be a problem. So we have seen this in previous, let's say, epidemics or pandemics. Um, and I'm mainly thinking of HIV/AIDS, where we did see that in a number of countries, like South Africa, but also other African countries, poorer countries, there was a massive problem with getting access to these treatments at the time. Because intellectual property rights allowed companies to not just limit the quantities they sold, but also determine the price. Obviously setting it at a price which was unaffordable for most South Africans, for example. And so you could see that there was going to be a similar, albeit different, but a similar topic here. Um, One of them being, of course, the production capacity. So, we knew already at the time that no one company would be able to produce enough for the entire world globally. And so using all of the production capacity that was going to be at the time was already, one of the priorities. So yeah, and then I was very inspired maybe as well by what was done with the polio vaccine. So when there was two inventors, Salk and Schumann, who both basically refused to patent their invention, so in the 50s, which helped to get polio at least eradicated in many parts of the world. So let's say I had both a negative and a positive example. The positive example of what happened to polio, and the very negative example of what happened to HIV/AIDS.
On the 21st of May, the European Parliament voted in favor of the TRIPS waiver. So, how did you take the news? How did it feel to get a step closer to obtain what you asked for?
That's a good question. They voted in favor. We might vote against it this week. This is the game of politics, unfortunately. But no, what I think is especially positive about this is that when we started this campaign about a year ago, um, no one really cared, and very few agreed. So what is positive now is that it has really become has really taken center stage of the political debate. And this was due in part to what we did, but also in part to, and a big part, I think, to the big coalition of civil society organizations, trade unions as well. As I think last week or the week before that, Industrial, which is a global trade union, and the pharmaceutical trade unions of that global trade union of industry, they said they supported it. So you can really see there's been pressure that has been building outside of Parliament, outside of the European Commission, also within the WTO, so the World Trade Organization. And what gives hope in this is that you can not only put something on the agenda, you can also with a bit of luck at least, put get majorities for this, as long as there's pressure from outside. And this is a little bit, this is where many of the people that voted in favor, I don't think they're necessarily convinced, but because of the outside pressure, they decided to go for it. So let's say the main takeaway, I think, is that it's good because it increases the pressure. It shows that even the parliament could vote for this. At the same time, it is symbolic, but symbols are important. If you it's because I'm saying symbolic because the European Parliament obviously doesn't have the power to actually do it. But still, every little step, every little vote, increases the pressure, and gets us maybe one step closer to where we need to be.
As of today, on the other hand, the European Commission still hasn't voted in favor of the TRIPS waiver. Do you think it's going to happen? And if so, what takes so much time?
I don't think it's going to happen now. I think it might happen. Otherwise, I wouldn't have started, the fighting for it. And I think so many organizations wouldn't be involved if they had no hope that it was going to happen. Why is it taking so long? Well, I think there's two main things. First, the first one is the fact that we are, and especially the European Commission, but not just, are very close to the pharmaceutical multinationals. They wield really huge power over our policy making in general. I always take the example of Belgium, where we've got a tax law which is designed and even written to an extent by them, just to give them some tax deductions on whatever revenue they get from patents. So, if you get companies that are able to basically co-author a law in a country, then this kind of shows what kind of power they have. So this is one thing, and secondly, I think there's the ideological point, where it's always been about, for a number of parties, for a huge number of parties, of putting the state at the service of what they call the competitiveness of companies. But mainly this is about making very strong European companies imposing their law on the world. And sharing technology is then considered a risk. Not only sharing technology, even just asking something in exchange for the public money you put in, because this, I didn't say that before, but if you look at the amounts of public money that have gone into this, not just into basic fundamental research, but also afterwards in the expansion of production capacity, the risk, the economic risk, the financial risk we're taking for side effects, all of these things, if you look at that, they would just say, well, there should be some rights, or some return on investment for public authorities. But we've not even been asking that. In the United States there is something. So I mean, the United States actually did hold, or still hold, some IP rights on the Moderna vaccine because they funded it. So I think up to 99%. The European Union just ideologically cannot get around that, and this is a problem inside, inside the European Union, and of the design of the European Union, where we've set up these institutions that are very much used to handing out money, research funds, subsidies, whatsoever, to big companies. But then when it comes to give us something in exchange, they're like, no, 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 because this would hurt the competitiveness. But this is an ideological problem.
We know that the USA showed their approval for the TRIPS waiver, and let's suppose that the European Union does the same. What would it mean concretely to have the European Union plus the United States showing their support for the TRIPS waiver? Would that make enough pressure on the big pharma to drop their patents?
Well, it would make a difference at the WTO. So the World Trade Organization actually does have the power to do that. So you know that the intellectual property system globally is basically has been instituted by what they call the TRIPS agreement, which is the trade-related intellectual property agreement. And so as it is considered trade related, it is, and has been approved through the WTO, it is competence of the WTO. Now, what we have seen inside the WTO is that it have been the rich countries, the wealthier countries, European countries, United States, indeed, Switzerland, Canada, Japan as well, that have been blocking this. While it has been a proposal that has been supported by, I mean, initially came from India and South Africa, but has been supported by over 100 countries now. So what it would mean concretely if they would lift their opposition, well, you'd first go into negotiations on the exact text and so on, but still, it would mean that it would happen. Because once the WTO lifts this, pharmaceutical companies cannot oppose it. Then we would have to force them indeed to share technology and so on. But this once again comes down to, are you willing to impose anything upon them? Always when I talk to people, I always use this comparison, saying, we've been able to impose lockdowns on the social life of people throughout Europe, throughout the world, but we're not able to just share, to make companies share anything, because this is, if you look at the counter arguments, is always this, yeah, but it's not enough. Okay, if it's not enough, let's do more. That's it. Yeah, but we can't force companies to do anything. Why not? If we make the laws, we should be able to kind of force companies to comply. So it would make a massive difference if the United States and the European Union would indeed get on board. Is it enough? No, but as I sometimes use the explanation to say, no, if people say, cleaning the kitchen is not enough, you also should clean the rest of your house. Okay, but you can start by cleaning your kitchen. It's not an argument not to clean the kitchen.
I want to ask you, how does it feel to be an outsider in the way that, as of today, Belgium does not support it, and the PPE
Mm.
party is one of the few, if not the only one, supporting it. So, how is it to be the opposition, but still the European Parliament approving your idea?
Well, as I said, the European Parliament is very precarious, so be careful about that, because we're negotiating a resolution for this plenary, and it's not at all sure that the decision of last month will be confirmed. So but okay, these are, changing power relations, and we need to accept that. How does it feel? It's complicated. It's on the one hand, there's something positive about it, because the Belgian government had to speak about it. We've had ministers, one socialist minister, that had to say personally that they were in favor of it. But then obviously the rest of the government wasn't. Even inside the Socialist Party, for example, they weren't. The Greens say they're in favor of it, but they don't really put it on the agenda of the government. So there's also a little bit of hypocrisy there. But the first positive thing is that you manage from the opposition to put something on the agenda. So I think this is a positive thing of it. The negative side, of course, is that Belgium refuses to be, the vanguard or the front runner in this thing for this campaign for justice. We have also proposed to the Belgian government to break ranks with the European Union on this at the WTO, because the European Union represents all member states at the WTO, but at the same time, a member state can take a diverging position. Could say, no, my stance is slightly different than that from the EU. So we've proposed this to the Belgian government, but they have not complied. So that's a bit disappointing in regard also to other countries, to other parties, sorry, like left-wing parties, where you would say, they say they're in favor, but then the government in which they have, 4 parties out of the 7 parties making up the Belgian government are officially left-wing. We even had people from the Christian Democrats, the Flemish Christian Democrats, say they're in favor, and then they write these wonderful opinion pieces, but they don't follow up. So that's a little bit frustrating. But at the same time, as I said, there's a big positive side to it. It also shows that if you build up the right coalition and if you put the pressure from outside, then you can actually achieve things. So I think all by all, I'm rather positive. But yeah, we need to push further and see what we can make out of it.
So why is it that the other parties in Belgium don't support it, as 70% of people living in G7 countries want their government to act towards a TRIPS waiver? So why don't the other parties listen to their people? Is it just all about profits?
Well, yes, the short answer is yes. The longer answer is that in part they are under pressure. This is what I said. So you saw that they were shifting. Even parts of the liberals. This is because of public pressure. If there was no public pressure, this would not happen. Indeed, some people told me in 2020 that IP shouldn't even be a topic of debate. So the idea was not even to discuss this. So the fact that it's being discussed, that even people out of personal feelings or whatsoever are now saying from within the government that they support it, even though in a rather a double-faced way, still it is it shows that that they're aware that people want this to happen. But yes, if the governments replied and always answered to the will of the people, then we would have very different governments. So I think, yeah, the main takeaway from this is that the lobby and the weight of these big pharmaceutical companies is still more important than the weight of the people. Partially because of inertia, partially because of ideology, partially because of money. But yeah, this is and you know how this goes. I mean, this is even got parties going to elections promising something and then doing the exact opposite once in government. So that is why I'm always, also insisting so much on building a movement, because if you don't build a movement, you don't get there.
Yeah. So what can people do now to push their government to act? I know about the No Profit on Pandemic petition. Could you maybe tell me about it, or any other thing that us people can do?
Well, I think, I mean, yeah, the No Profit on Pandemic is a European Citizens Initiative, which is basically kind of a proposal for European law, let's say, so to change the EU law on IP rights. So this is important because it's a formal initiative, meaning that you should actually, how would I say, the European Commission should reply to this. If they reach the threshold, the European Commission is obliged to reply. So in this sense, it's a very important initiative. And secondly, I would say join, like, don't just sign it yourself, but like, I don't know, make a TikTok video and promote it. We had one TikTok video of us, I don't remember. I don't remember what country she was from, but she did one video and that got 7,000 signatures, and it spread a lot of awareness. It was so, spread awareness yourself, organize, join either an NGO, a trade union, a political party, join the campaign, and start gathering signatures yourself, and indeed maybe organize some actions, because this always helps. If you invite the media and you're in front of AstraZeneca, you're in front of the European Commission, you're in front of wheresoever, this can always help. So these are, I'd say, like, share, mobilize, organize, that kind of stuff.